Hello and welcome to Building High Performance Cultures, a weekly series where we talk with executives of top organizations about how they built high performance cultures and how they're leveraging culture as competitive advantage. I'm Marty Parker, the President and Chief Executive Officer of Waterstone Human Capital, and my guest today is the President and CEO of Adlon Brown Limited, Debra Hewson. Debbie, welcome to Building High Performance Cultures.
Thanks, Marty. Nice to be here.
Awesome to have you. Just a little bit about Adlon Brown and you. Debbie joined Adlon Brown in 1991, and prior to becoming the president and CEO, which you did in 2007, Debbie was the chief operating officer for 7 years, and she has really and truly earned a reputation for her vision, her passion, her transparency, and her dedication, not only as a leader of the business, but as a leader in the business community in Vancouver and in British Columbia. And in 2017, Debbie was named Canada's Most Admired CEO in the growth category. And in that same year, Adlon Brown was named as one of Canada's Most Admired Corporate Cultures. Now, Debbie, for those viewers, listeners who are with us today, maybe tell us a little bit about Adlon Brown and kind of this high performance culture that you and your colleagues have developed over the years.
Okay, so Adlon Brown is a investment management firm that was founded in 1923. So we've been in business for a very long time. We have about 100 advisors and about just over 300 employees now across 6 branches in British Columbia. And we manage retail investments on behalf of our clients. And currently we manage we're just about 13 billion. It was a little bit more the beginning of March, but about 13 billion in client assets.
Wow. Debbie, tell us about the culture and what you've developed and what kind of sets Adlon Brown apart.
Well, you know, people say that, you hear this a lot, that, you know, their culture is like a family. And I would very much say that Odlum is like that. But as we've grown, that family has become more professional and more institutionalized. And it's, you know, it's getting bigger, so the firm's getting larger. And I used to pride myself on knowing everybody. That's getting harder to do these days. But it's very much a partnership. Like it's an employee-owned firm. So all of us are, it's a very, I think of it like a group of entrepreneurs that have come together and have a common purpose and a set of common values. And we really take our independence seriously, whether it's in the investment space, or whether it's in the way that we think about managing money and looking after our clients, and also thinking about how we interact with each other. So it's very much a partnership and a group of individuals who very much have a common goal and a common set of values.
So, you know, you talked about family, entrepreneurs, common values, common purpose. So that's a lot of voices, especially in an employee-owned business. So as the president and CEO, how do you see your role in maybe building, maybe the better word is sustaining this culture at Odlum?
Well, you know, I think in any culture, whether it's a family, a business, it doesn't matter. You know, tone comes from the top. Mm-hmm. And so I very much see my role here as establishing that tone and setting what we expect to be how people are treated, whether they're clients, whether they're partners, whether they're, doesn't matter who they are. And so for us, you know, I'm a big believer. It's a simple message, but I'm a big believer in the golden rule and treat those the way you would expect to be treated. And that means respectfully being a good listener, trying to find a common path. And the easiest way I think to do that is to say, this is how we expect business and relationships to be conducted. And everyone can have a different way of doing that. But at the end of the day, it has to be done in a respectful, conciliatory, can-do kind of way. And if you want to work that way, then there's definitely a place for you here. And if that's not the way you want to work, that's fine, but probably aren't going to find a successful place at Odlum.
And you have a variety of leaders. I mean, I remember the first time I met your team, I couldn't get them to stop talking about you initially, which was both humorous and also revealing. It's absolutely true. It was in your boardroom. You weren't there. But they have different styles, right? I mean, you have some who are formal, some who are informal. So how do you rally them? How do you, I guess, keep them together and aligned as champions of your culture?
Well, I think it's about celebrating what makes them different, but also celebrating what connects us. So I don't want, people, I don't want to surround myself with people who just are like me. I like to think, like, one of the things I think I am really good at is identifying what I'm really bad at and finding people who can perform that role for me, or that have that skill set and can bring it to the table. And they may have, different mannerisms, different styles, but at the end of the day, if we all don't fundamentally believe that we're here to achieve a common goal, and that is to serve our clients and to actually have fun while we're doing it and do a really great job, then we really don't have much, right? So it's about kind of saying these are the sort of the non-negotiables. And the non-negotiables are respectful behavior, listening to what other people have to say, trying to find a consensus, and understanding that we're better as a group than we are as individuals. If we can get that right, then we'll be very successful. And I think the firm has always had that belief. When I haven't been around for the whole 96 years, feels like it sometimes, but when I do talk to people who were here sort of that have been around for 50 years, like our chairman's been here for 50 years, he talks about his relationships with his partners 50 years ago, the same way that I talk about them, about my partners today. And I think, like, how fortunate am I to have found a place like that? But I take very seriously the necessity to continue that legacy. And I'm lucky that I have partners that think the same way.
I think you are. I think you're all lucky, but it's rare that you hear celebrate differences and those things that are most common or the connection points. And I know you've been very deliberate in developing a community of leaders in the last number of years there, but why is there an intentional focus on leadership development, and maybe talk to us a little bit about how you do that?
Well, as I said earlier, tone comes from the top, and I set that, but I can't be everywhere all the time, and it can't be entirely on me. So I think about it that I need, cultural ambassadors throughout the firm, and those are our leaders. But I've also fundamentally believed, like, I've always felt that leadership is all about a mindset. It's not a role. So anybody has the capacity to be a leader. Some of the best leadership lessons I've learned have been from people that were not in leadership positions at all, but had the ability to kind of think outside of themselves and think about what's really important here. And so for us, it's about trying to develop that mentality amongst our entire team, not just, certainly we do it within our leadership, our senior leadership teams and our operational teams, But really it's about trying to instill in all of our people that they are a leader in what they do every day, and that how they approach that leadership matters, and that the skills that they learn, not just at Odlum, but in other things that they do, whether it's coaching soccer or, you know, sitting on their school's parent advisory, like all of those, or whether it's, you know, running the dinner table, right? All your kids are talking at once and everyone, you know, you manage that. That's leadership. And trying to tell people, like, let them see that those things are in front of them all the time. And it's not just about getting an office or a title. It's about how you show up and how you think about things. And once people realize that they have that ability within them, because they've just never sort of thought of it as being a leader before, then all of a sudden that skill set starts to transfer into everything that they do. So, you know, and some people are a quicker study than others, but I think it's about pointing out that behavior and trying to draw analogies to that behavior so people can really see that, yeah, you know, when all your kids come home for dinner and everyone's yelling at each other and kind of being disrespectful about this or that, and you manage that or not, that's leadership. And you can do the same thing in a meeting, and you can do the same thing with your team. And it's just about being respectful and listening to what people have to say.
So in other words, I'm paraphrasing a bit here, or you're saying at Adlon Brown, leadership isn't about the level that you're at. It's about the attitude, how you behave based on a set of values, and that it's really open to anybody, providing that they step up, act in a certain way, and in that way, they are leaders. Would I be correct in saying so?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, it's not, whenever I hear somebody say, if I have this role, then I will do this.
Right.
My answer to them is, well, why not do it now? Right? Like, what's stopping you? Because it shouldn't be about, I get this, then therefore I will do that. It should be, I've done this, and the firm's saying, gosh, look at what they're doing. Look at how they're stepping up. Like, let's give them an even bigger platform to do that.
Yeah.
And I it's a subtle difference, but I really think it makes all the difference.
It's actually not that subtle. It's not that subtle. It is act in a way and the results will follow. And then the decisions, which you don't control, are likely to follow those.
Yeah. And, you know, it's challenging even in a firm of our size, because sure, we're getting bigger, but we're still not, you know, a huge place. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes that means that those leaders, there's only so many of those platforms that you can create. Yeah, sure. And that may mean that people have to go somewhere else to get a different platform that they aspire to. Mm-hmm. And I understand that. It's hard when it happens, but I understand it. But for me, if they can walk out of here and say, you know, yeah, I wanted to be the CFO, and that's not going to happen in the time frame that I'm looking for, but I came out of Odlum with a skill set to make that happen somewhere else, then that's a positive too. Absolutely.
You know, Debbie, I know that diversity and inclusion is really important at Adlon Brown, and that you're trying to sustain this in your culture, build it, make sure it's part of the core of your culture across locations and hundreds of team members, different views, different expectations. But talk a little bit about how this plays into your culture, and possibly it's how your culture plays into it. I'm not sure.
So one of my partners has this great saying. She says that diversity is about being invited to the dance, and that inclusion is being asked to dance. And I think that really nails it for me. And so it kind of builds on this whole idea of leadership that we have too, and that diversity, we're trying to create an environment where all of our team members feel empowered, and that there is diversity in thought everywhere you look, and that we have cross-functional teams, and that everyone has a different way of resolving things or has a different solution. And we're trying to celebrate that diversity and that inclusion. And to me, it's not just about, it really has to be about diversity of thought. And it has to start there, because if you just do it in terms of, well, you know, gender or race, or all of those things are important, but you can still have, you know, you might have 50% women, and, you know, you may have gender equality in your around the table, but if everyone thinks exactly the same thing, do you really have diversity? I don't think so. No. And so we're really trying to say, yeah, like, no, we're inviting you to the dance, but we're actually asking you to dance while you're here. And I think for us, it's really worked well, because we don't sort of say we want to have this, in terms of a quota or a representation. We want to have a whole bunch of people that have diverse views, and that come to the table and maybe push us all to think a little bit differently about something that we think we know.
Understood. Before we even started to hit record in this session, Debbie, we were talking a little bit about this paradigm shift, this transformation that's going on. You know, with that in mind, what do you see as critical to the future of aligning your people, the team at Odlum, to your culture, but also attracting new talent to your high performance culture in kind of in the middle or aftermath, who knows? It's hard to even say at the end of, it's just hard to imagine right now, of this change that we're going through.
I think the biggest issue of all, and it's always been there, but I think it's really come to the fore in the last couple of, the last 8-9 weeks for sure. It's trust. It's all about trust. Like, who do you trust? Who do you listen to? I mean, we're seeing great examples of who to trust and who not to trust in the current environment that we're in. And trust, I think, is all about saying, we're going to do our absolute best to try and find a path through this. And we're going to make the best decisions that we can with the information that we have, and be as transparent as we can be about those decisions. And we're going to know that we're going to make some good decisions, and we're probably going to make a couple of bad ones too. And when we make the bad ones, if we have the right people at the table that have a diverse way of thinking about things, they're going to call out those bad ones, and we're going to course correct. And that if we can acknowledge that we've done that, and that we're constantly thinking like, okay, I tried this, I had the best of intentions, it worked great. What can I build on? Or I tried this, didn't work so well. What do we need to do to refine and move in a different direction? And I think the more that you can include your team in that decision making, and have their input onto how that they feel about that trust that you're trying to build, because they'll be pretty quick to point it out if they don't have it. That's what people are going to expect more and more. We were talking before we started about the coming back to work in this current environment, and that's all about trust, right? It's got everything to do with us saying, we're going to do our best to provide a safe environment, and we're going to look to the people that we trust to provide us with the principles around that. And we trust you to tell us when we've got it right and when we don't. And I think that will be the paradigm shift for all of it. And I always think it's been there, but I think, you know, in the past, maybe it was more of a trust me, and now it'll be more of a let's trust together. And
Boy, what you're saying is absolutely spot on. This is central to almost every discussion we're having on what we're finding to be a cultural paradigm shift. And I'm going to generalize, but if you look at the models of the past, they were built on, we got to keep people together, keep them close by, monitoring them closely. Obviously, I'm exaggerating to make the point, but it was really not built on trust. The future business model and future culture will be based on, we're going to give you trust, we're going to give you the tools, we're going to support you in that, we're going to enable your judgment. You'll make some bad decisions, we'll make some bad decisions, we'll make hopefully more right decisions, but it's based on trust, really central. And that shift is what is going to be somewhat challenging for us, and it's going to take iteration and experience.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny, I had a call with one of my partners a couple of weeks ago, and he was upset because he had phoned somebody in our organization, and they were on, it was the middle of the day, and they were in the car with their kids going to Costco. Mm-hmm. And he said, you know, well, they're not working. And I said, well, yeah, but I mean, they're at home, their spouse is probably at home, their kids are at home, they got to eat. There's only so many windows to do all this stuff. And at the end of the day, you know, what matters is that the work gets done. Does it really matter whether it happens at exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 10 o'clock at night? Like, whenever it's going to work for that person, we have to trust that they can make the right decisions. And, you know, the best way to trust them to make the right decisions is to model that, hey, we all do our best all the time, and sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong, and you learn, and that's how it goes.
And in fact, the greatest outcome will be outcomes.
Exactly.
I mean, the outcomes are going to stand on their own, whether someone is around the corner, whether you can high five them, or it's got to be a virtual, you know, green hand on your screen.
Exactly. Right. So it's an interesting time, but I think, you know, I think we're all getting a master's degree in change right now, whether we wanted to or not, we're getting one. And that's a good thing.
Debbie, what else? Trust being central, but what trends do you see coming or foreseeing in terms of how we need to, what's going to impact us when we're building high performance cultures?
Well, I do believe that it's about investing in that, and not just saying I need you to be a leader, but continually kind of demonstrating what that looks like, and providing the opportunities for people to hone that. You know, typically we tend to build professional development around skills. And by that, I mean more tactical skills, and not soft skills. And I think the soft skills are definitely the piece that's going to differentiate firms going forward, because it's about understanding how to motivate different people in different ways. And that's all about learning those soft skills. And that, you know, when I ask, you know, Marty to do it I need to ask this way. And when I ask Debbie to do it, I need to ask this way, because they both respond differently. And, you know, when I'll say that to my team sometimes, and they'll look at me like, well, how am I supposed to know that? And I'll say, and I don't mean to oversimplify it, but I'll take it back to well, you got 3 kids. Do you ask them to make their beds like the same way? I mean, maybe not, but definitely they each respond differently to different ways of asking. And I think that's really going to be critical, particularly when, you have people potentially working remotely for longer periods of time. And, you know, mediums like Zoom and Teams and that are out there, they're helpful, but they're still not the same as sitting in a room and reading the visual cues. And so, you know, we have to learn to develop those skills in a different way now. And I think that'll be very interesting and something that we really need to be investing in for people. Because it requires a different skill set again. Like, you really have to listen. Like, if you've been on a conference call, I've been a lot of them in the last couple of weeks that are like 3-4 hours long. It's really hard. If you don't have video, you really have to actively listen. It's exhausting. And we need to prepare our people for these things, because I think that the way we do business, it will embrace a new normal, but it will look different. And we're going to think about how we conduct ourselves much differently. And that means learning different skills to do that.
Yeah, 100%. I was on a phone call with a leader this morning, first thing, and we're in the middle of some leadership training, and we have a session next week, which will of course be all digital. And this person said, you know, one of the things I rely on, and I've realized I've relied on, is the water cooler conversation, the leaning on the door jamb and checking in to see how people are. And that's not been an issue with my direct team, because I'm on videos, I'm on calls with them all the time. But it has been with our office that I kind of rely on figuring out, how are people feeling? Are they overworked? I get a sense. So I made the decision, as she said, to do skip levels and just literally 5-10 minute calls to see how people were. Well, normally I see people at the water cooler and say, hi, how are you? And it's fairly surface. But these discussions in many cases didn't end up surface. And they really appreciated that I was calling. I didn't have an agenda, but we ended up into either, in some cases, discussions about their kids, about how they're feeling, their fears, what they've learned, their excitement. And I thought to myself, I've been missing out all these years as a leader on not connecting with people, but thinking I was connecting, but not connecting. And I thought, wow, what a gift, what a revelation that this person had been given. And the recognition that she had come through that in itself is significant.
Yeah,
right?
It is. It's like fundamentally, I think, changing how we connect and what we actually think connection is, right? And it's how do you institutionalize personal connection?
Right.
It's really a hard one, right?
Oh.
And for everyone, it's going to be a little bit different. You know, right out of the gate, when people started working remotely, we were thinking about, gosh, what about those people that live alone and they're self-isolating? So we kind of had a different strategy for them, and just kind of connecting in, whether it was on our internal messaging system. And a couple of times I did what you did. I just sort of, you know, how you doing? And it wasn't like a big, long, this unprecedented time, where it was just a how you doing? And some of them I got back a fine, so I might engage a bit more. Some of them I got a paragraph, but it was really interesting where those conversations went, and a real insight into how people were feeling and just what their fears were, because this is a scary time. It's not going away anytime soon, I don't think.
No, uncertainty always is, but without feelings, we can't move forward. Without expressing our feelings, without moving forward, we can't experience, and without experience, we can't make mistakes to eventually have positive outcomes. So it starts with how we feel.
Yeah, and I think it's what these last couple of months have done, have actually underlined how important it is. It's okay to have feelings, and it's okay to show them, and that's I mean, you can't be wearing them on your sleeve 100% of the time, but it's okay to say, I just don't know what to do here. That's all right. And that's how you build trust too, is by saying, you know, we all feel like that from time to time. That's normal. And if you didn't feel like that at all ever, that would be not normal. And it's okay to show that.
Debbie, last question, and that is, you're sitting across not from a grizzly veteran like myself, but a young, more dynamic, entrepreneur, professional manager who is engaging upon their own high performance culture journey. What is the one piece of advice that you would give her, in terms of, as they say, look, I'm looking for some gem as I start down this path? What would you share with them?
In a really simple phrase, culture is, you have to be consistent. You have to be committed 100% of the time. You know, every decision, every initiative, you have to think about through the lens of culture, and you have to play the long game. And it is a long game. It's not just, Tuesday afternoon is, I'm going to think about culture. It's in everything that you do. And it's, if you're not thinking about that as you're trying to move your business wherever you're trying to move it to, you will not get there. And it is a long game. And consistency matters. Consistency it matters.
Debbie, we're so blessed to have you, actually, not just here today for our listeners and viewers, but in the Canada's Most Admired Family. You are truly one of the greats as it relates to culture and leadership development. And as we heard today, and truly, we believe it, that soft skills are the new hard skills, that trust is the currency that will, pay enormous dividends in the future for organizations. And that culture is competitive advantage. And, Adlon Brown is going to be around for another 96 years because they've somehow figured that out, and they clearly did when they put you in the leadership role. And having met your colleagues, there's a real reason why they feel so strongly. And I think it's because their development as leaders has come a long way because of each other, because of the tone the organization has set and that you've fostered. So we thank you so much for helping enlighten kind of through your experiences, the journey of culture as a driver of performance. And I want to thank you on behalf of everyone listening today.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. It was my pleasure to do, and I'm very happy to be part of the community of leaders that is Waterstone and the Most Admired. It's a great organization and a great group of people, and it's really been a huge benefit to me to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you. What a lovely thing to say. And join us next week for another episode of Building High Performance Cultures. And in the meantime, if you want to learn more about the topic, go to waterstonehc.com, and here's to our futures being bigger than our past. Thank you.